granite quarry, granite in it for the quarry to last for like another 200 years.
What, the one that's right down here, or the one for?
In Mount Airy.
Oh.
It's granite quarry. So what this quarry up here was is like, it used to be a rock quarry. But they dug it
Yeah,
out
I was trying to
completely.
get out there before it got popular and
I rode
big.
out there one day.
I
It
remember
was real
when we
foggy
used to try
though,
to
so I didn't
sneak
get a
up
good
there
look.
just to see it, 'cause they used to be.
It's pretty cool.
Oh, they was making it?
It's pretty cool. They got
And
like
all of a sudden,
a
then-
really
I
nice
rode
bridge,
there,
like a whatever you call it, like it goes up so you can go out.
I remember when people were
See,
going,
yeah.
Yeah,
and then
and
all of a
everybody hangs the
sudden,
locks like they do on
Yeah, I've been up there a few times.
trail passes. Yeah.
I was trying to go when people really weren't going. Now
That's a
everybody's
nice
up
trail.
It's
there.
like most of the time when I go, everybody's up there.
And I remember when it used to not be like, you know, an attraction.
Oh, I'd never heard about it.
Yep, that's what I'm saying.
I'd been riding back going to Salem
Yep.
Lake.
It's always been back there. It's just now it's very populated. Very popular. Very. But it's pretty.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's very pretty. It's like we used to go to Triad Park.
Alright, so keep doing it. We're almost done with the semester, but keep throwing up your presentations next week. On Monday and on Wednesday. Zed brought up a good point yesterday, so make sure we all understand. When you're presenting your stuff, it doesn't have to be necessarily something that I agree with, right? You can try to sell me on that's what I want you to do, but if it doesn't meet up with the views that we've talked about here in class, I don't care. I get paid, so I really don't care either way, right? But if you want to try to sell me on what you're trying to do, that's the ideal, and that's how I'll grade you on. So he's got some stuff that he was talking about yesterday that doesn't necessarily gel with what we've been talking about in class. Great, sell me on it. That's all I'm going to do. But don't try to make it spin my way when you don't think that. That's going to be very hard for you to get up here and present things when it's not something you totally agree with. So doesn't have to meet up with anything we talk about in class. It could be totally something that's off the wall. As long as you're presenting it, I don't really care. Right?
Makes it easy.
Look, we were just talking about that.
Oh, just work? Okay. As long as it gels with how you're presenting it, that's what I told Zed. As long as you are presenting it the right way,
Yeah.
that's how I'm grading you. It doesn't have to necessarily be something I agree with or something I've taught you in class. It doesn't have to be that, as long as you're doing the right thing. Make sure with every graph that you decide to use, force, velocity, length, tension, all those, that what you're trying to present fits inside that graph. That's really how I'm grading you and then how you present that. Not necessarily something that I have taught you that I agree with. Right, so we're all straight with that part.
Yeah.
Right. Test next Thursday, review next Friday for your final, which is the following Wednesday after that, which is the 25th. And I just put up here from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. is how long you have. I'll be in here until 1 p.m. Just because you guys are technically supposed to have 2 hours to take it. If you want to show up at 12 o'clock, that's on you. But I would strongly advise you not to show up at 12:45 and try to finish in 15 minutes, because at 1 o'clock it's over and that's when I collect your test. I mean, you probably all want to get here at 11, get it over with.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know, I'll be sitting there until 1 p.m. That's just kind of what I'm supposed to do from the university standpoint. Right. Last thing I don't have, I'm not going to write it up here, so you guys probably got an email about course evaluations. Trying to evaluate me. That helps me at the end of the year, just sometimes supposed to turn in to Dr. Brown. You can say that I absolutely suck. I really don't care. I just have to turn something in that shows that you guys reviewed it. It should have got an email to you, right? Is that from you guys know who it came from?
It's like something.
Hopefully you don't say I suck.
Melissa,
Yeah, it's-
something
Marissa
with
Smith?
an M.
No.
Something with an M. Hyphen. An M and a
I got
hyphen.
a couple of. I got one from Martinez.
I already did the one from Martinez.
Yeah, I did.
What was that one for?
This,
Was from Miss Tanya in Dr. Brown's office?
Tanya Martinez.
Tanya Martinez.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
Dr. Brown's assistant, but what was she sending it for?
just making sure that we're completing all of them, and then
I
we
think
have
it was
the Survey Monkey.
advisors.
SurveyMonkey.com.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a little bit different. Advisor, a little bit different. Course evaluation should have come from the university, not from Miss Tanya.
Well, I don't think I got the.
That's So they said they sent them out. I'll double check and we'll kind of talk more about it next week.
Oh, I got him.
But you got, okay, if you see that, like I said, it's not a mandatory thing. I'm not making it a grade or anything like that. It just helps me if you guys all fill it out. It makes it look like you guys actually gave an interest in the class. And hopefully you don't say I sucked again, but if you do, you do. That's fine.
Oh, Becky.
Oh, that.
Becky Whistler, whatever it is, yeah, that's her.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you see it, great. If you didn't, you don't really want to care about it, that's great too. But it helps us out from not just my standpoint, for all your teachers. That's kind of how we're reviewed on and how we get graded on at the end of the semester. So if you guys do that, that'd be awesome. All right, so here we go. The 3 R's of power. What are they?
Relative strength,
Relative strength,
rate of force development, and reactive strength.
rate of force development, and reactive strength. So that was our 3 R's of power. We've already talked about the first 2. We did relative strength. That's basically your strength compared to your body weight. We did rate of force development yesterday. That's basically how fast you can produce that force. We said within jumping, remember that number is 0.25. We talked about a few things that go along with that and how fast you can produce that force. And then today is reactive strength. We're going to do this one kind of quick because it's really pretty simple because it's something we've already talked about. Reactive strength comes down to the eccentric, concentric transition. If you remember that, is how much we load the spring, which is the eccentric component, and then how fast we unload. And that's the eccentric. So I'll kind of circle those. I kind of have to see how everything goes together here. We've talked about that a bunch and some other stuff in the review in the testing here. We're going to go back to this for some of the specific exercises we did. But this is really all this comes down to. This is another way of thinking about this, and maybe we've heard of some other class. Well, I don't know if you have other class or not. Stretch reflex. Who's had motor control yet? Anybody had motor control yet? Yeah, not motor development. Motor development, motor control is different. You guys might have that next semester. And you'll in stretch reflex, you'll learn a lot more about in motor control. But really what the stretch reflex is involuntary. That's a big crazy word. What does that mean? You guys seen it before. What does involuntary mean? Not trying, that's a good way to think about it. So my heartbeat right now is involuntary, right? Another way, a better way of saying it is not so much not trying as not thinking about it. Involuntary is something that happens on its own. I'll put it over here so we kind of have that in our brain. Happens on its own. From the standpoint of right now, the stretch reflex is an involuntary muscle contraction happening after, I'll get out of your way in a second. Muscle lengthening. So you're going to write this down and be like, what's the same thing as eccentric concentric? It is. That's just a better way of thinking about how we're going to talk about it in a second when we train this. Involuntary, this is a lot of chicken scratch, so let me help you guys out. Involuntary muscle contraction happening after a muscle lengthening. Getting long before we jump, so we're lengthening all those muscles on the way down. Once we get to a good, nice stretch, it's almost like an involuntary contraction as we come back up. When we are good at this, this is what happens. When we are able to be high jumpers that leave the ground fast and get up off the ground pretty quick, you're doing this without even thinking about it too much. Watch the NFL Combine guys. What do? They're not going down and stopping and thinking to themselves, okay, I'm down here now, let me jump. They go down as fast as they can. As soon as they get down to wherever they feel they need to be at, they've stretched to where they need to be at, they go right back up and they're off the ground, and that's how they jump high. You're good at this. The stretch reflex happens kind of on its own. That's where training comes from. All right, how do we train that? That's where I'm going to now. Why are you guys writing that? So training. Stretch reflex comes down to one word, and we've all heard it before, I think. Plyometrics. If you haven't heard about it, Zeb's going to teach us about it next Wednesday, from what he told me yesterday. Right. And he's going to change everybody's mind about it. It's okay to train as much as you can and go to complete exhaustion because that's okay. He's going to teach us all about that next Wednesday. Right. But anyways, plyometrics, we've all heard of that, right, before. What is plyometrics? how can we sum it up?
Trying to make quick twitch fibers quicker.
Quick twitch fibers quicker, that's a great way of thinking about it, right? A lot of times we say plyometrics, we think about jumping activities, which is really what it goes along with, but plyometrics can also be found in the upper body. Any kind of a, you're yawning through your mask, I can see you. Any kind of a stretch reflex where things get longer and then become quicker to go, we can do and think about that as being applied metric. If I take a weighted ball right now and I pull myself back and stretch as far as I can back this way and then release as fast as I can, that is a plyometric for the upper body. If I did a push-up right now and I come down and I stretch on the, and I'm going to push up off the ground, you guys seen Marine push-ups before? What do they do?
The push-up class.
Push them up and then they clap and they come back down. That is a plyometric push-up because I have to have enough force to explode myself off of the body and do that clap and then come back down and catch myself and go down. All that is plyometric, which is working that stretch reflex, which a good way to think about it is letting those faster fibers come faster, but allowing them to become a faster contraction after they've been lengthened. So plyometrics primarily is faster contraction once lengthened. And one of the best examples of it, I'll put it up here, we just kind of talk about it. If I was to stand on this table right here, you guys heard of depth jumps before? If I was going to stand on the table and I jump off the table, I land, I let myself gather, but as soon as I gather, I go right back up. That's a depth jump or a box jump. That's a great plyometric for in order to teach the body to become quicker getting off the ground after it's been lengthened. The lengthen happens on its own because of gravity, it's pushing me down. Once I come off that table and land, gravity's going to pull me down, but I try to go back up as fast as I can and not allow myself to get good. And I hate when I see jumpers do this. And then try to go up. It's got to be down and a down. Boom, boom. That's what that's going to help me do. Once I land, I go right back up. It's teaching me to be as fast as I can within that contraction. So plyometrics trains the stretch reflex, which is reactive strength, right? Like I said a bunch of things right there. Let me go the other way around. Reactive strength, eccentric, concentric, stretch reflex is trained by plyometrics. Let me do the other way around. Plyometrics, we ever got? Oh, so that's reactive strength. I need to do that again? I was teasing, but I can't if I need to. Everybody good?
Mm-hmm.
I'll do it one more time. Reactive strength, eccentric, concentric, that is the stretch reflex, and it's trained by doing plyometrics. That's reactive strength. Okay? Right, from there, now you are officially done.
What's after once, coach?
Once lengthened.
Lengthened.
Yeah, I think I said all right. Which one?
You said we're done.
Officially done with notes. I have no more notes to give you. We're going to review here now for the test. Next Monday and Wednesday, you're doing presentations. There's nothing on that as far as taking notes. Next Thursday, you have a test. Next Friday, you review again, and then you have the final. So from a note standpoint, in this class, you've officially reached the end. Congratulations.
Amen.
Wow. I'd rather take a yawn over that.
It's not even your notes. It's just all my classes. We still
Just said
rolling.
once.
Well, thankfully, you don't have to worry about rolling with mine, but you do have to study. So that's what we're going to talk about right now. So this is going to be
It's not that fun.
the review for your test, which is next Thursday.
Give the 10 questions.
10 questions. Right now, I'm giving you 20. Because for this one, I got to make you think a little bit. What am I going to do for the final? How many questions are on the final?
20.
20. What am I going to do for your review?
You're going to tell us all
I'm
20
giving you
questions.
all 20. Okay. But now for this test, I got to make you think a little bit. There's only 10 on this one. I'm going to give you 20 right now. You get to know all 20, then you still know them all, but you're only going to get 10 out of the 20. That makes sense.
Hold on, say that one more time. It's gonna be
Same
10.
questions.
It's gonna be 10 questions in test 3, but we're going over 20.
We're going over 20 right now.
Like this way, so I know exactly what to
Gotcha.
study.
Gotcha. All right.
That's
So-
good right there.
First one, and while we're going to review today, how much time I got? I got a lot of time, right? I went through that pretty fast.
That's a wonder.
1 to 1:30. So if we have any questions about this stuff, this is the best time to do it. What is more important in sprinting, force or technique? What's more important in sprinting, force or technique?
Ground reaction, no. Ground reaction, right?
Right, so what is that? Is that a force or technique?
Force.
That's a force. So that, how do you answer that question?
Sprint force. Well,
Say with the chip. Just throw it out.
Sprint force.
Force, yes. So force is definitely the right answer when you see that one. But the other part of this is going to be why. Why is force more important? Because what do you have to do in any time of running? What kind of running? What is running? A bunch of tiny what?
Fibers. No.
Not 5. Keep thinking.
You said what's running?
Every time I push, what am I doing actually?
Jumping.
I'm jumping. I have a bunch of tiny vertical jumps every time I sprint because I have to overcome gravity every time. So as I'm sprinting, I'm trying to do a bunch of tiny vertical jumps, and that is all about that. And technique really plays no role in that. And that's why you can have guys or girls that are running that have horrendous form, but they're still flying down the track, right?
So the answer to that question is just force.
Is force, and the reason why, which I'm not going to write up here right now, is because of the tiny vertical jumps, you're constantly overcoming gravity every time, and you have to apply force down into the track in order to do that.
Because of the tiny vertical jumps.
And applying force in order to overcome gravity. Kind of how I just said that, you don't have to get too crazy with it. Throw that stuff back at me and you got it all. All right, here we go. One and only way to increase speed. What is it? This is a nice simple, you get this one, you love it. This is a nice laid up curveball for a baseball analogy that you know is coming. You're sitting on a curveball and he throws you a nice float over the middle of the plate. You're ready to go if you see this one. What is the only way to train to increase, I guess put that, I'll put that in the question. There you go. Run fast, and then if you get that one, put that in there a lot. Run fast a lot. If you see this one, you love it, because all you have to write is run fast a lot, and you got it. In order to train to be fast, you got to run fast and do it a lot of times in order to become faster. You can't run fast by running at 70%. You'll never be a fast runner. This doesn't happen. All right, so you like that one, that's a good easy one. Do you like this one too if we get it? Because I think we know these now. Describe the horizontal and vertical forces found in top end speed. What are they? I don't want to write them. We know. What are the horizontal forces? Horizontal. What's pushing against me right now as I'm walking?
Air resistance.
Air resistance. Okay. How am I walking? What kind of force am I pushing that's making me go this way?
Ground reaction.
That's a vertical one. Think about horizontals first.
So air resistance.
Air resistance. My foot pushing against the ground is going to be propulsion force.
Propulsion.
And as I land, I have braking force.
Braking.
You want to put those over here?
Yeah, I'm still.
You got them, you know somewhere. Let's just write them down real fast. Since I got until 1:30, Miss Black, I'll make sure I didn't. She's got me on tape. All right, so horizontals here, let's do that. We had air resistance. Can I just kind of, let's just condense them just a little bit. You guys have those in there. Air resistance, you have propulsion force, and you had braking force. Now, let me just go ahead and kind of condense this a little bit. So that's number 3, but you're also going to have a question. You might have a question later on. What's the difference between these two? That's another question. Can I put number 5 or 4 by this? So we know that. That's another question. What's the difference between propulsion force and braking force from a horizontal standpoint? What is braking force?
Stopping.
Stopping. Slowing you down. So when your foot kind of gets in front of you, there's a brake that is applied by friction, and then once it kind of gets under my hip, then what happens to it? That's propulsion as I push off. So know that in our brains, no difference between those two, as we kind of talk about horizontal forces.
So for number 4, can we say propulsion is pushing? Can we just say propulsion is pushing off and braking is stopping?
Yeah.
And
That'll be sufficient. There you go. Just keep it nice and simple. Again, that's kind of, remember, I'm still on number 3, as all the forces. You might see that one as well. So what are the vertical forces now? So Jay already said 1. What was 1? Gravity is 1. And then ground reaction. Yeah. So that's 1 and 2. There's 2 of those, and there's 3 of those from the standpoint of horizontal and vertical. Out of all of those, which one's the most important?
Ground reaction.
Ground reaction is the most important. Is that a question on it? I'll go through it. This isn't your actual test. Don't try to steal it out of my hand, take it with you and stuff like that. Just some of my notes.
Is that start here already? Yeah, I'm good.
That's not what it is. Well, that's just later on. I'll get to it in a second. So those are your forces for top end. You have your 3 horizontals, and you have your 2 verticals. And then within that other one, I gave you another question. You'll see, you might see on your test, what's the difference between propulsion and braking force? That's another question. That's why I have the 4 next to it. Okay, questions? Good, Zeb? Looking at weird? Good? Yep. Yeah, Okay, still looking over it. You're just trying to get it in your brain?
Yeah.
Study it? Okay. I like it. Osmosis, it works. Everybody got that one, so I can erase this one? Good. I'm gonna leave 4 over there just now, I don't wanna erase it yet. That was number 4. Here's number 5, there's another one. Where we at? This is another good one, energetics. A vertical jump. If you see that one, I think I'll probably say discuss or explain the energetics of the vertical jump. What is the energetics of the vertical jump? Do you remember that from your notes? And actually, while we're here, let me just do all these real fast. 6, 7, 8. We had energetics, we had biomechanics, we had physics, and then we had physiology. So you'll see all of those. You might, well, I'm sure one of them was going to pop up in everybody's test. Physiology, I don't even spell physiology right. You gotta look. So all 4 of those are a vertical jump. Energetics is basically what? ATP storage. Again, that's a nice easy one. Now you're sitting on a fastball and you can kind of just ready to go. Because that's an 89 mile an hour coming in, you already know it's coming. If you say ATP storage, you've got that one. That's nice and simple. Biomechanics means what? A vertical jump. There's 2 things.
Load and explode.
Kind of, but now think about upper body and lower body. What's the upper body? What's going to happen? What? Kind of. So there's arm swing. You were there. You just kind of connected. Arm swing down and arm swing up. And then for the lower body, there was joint sequencing. And we should have those in your notes somewhere, right? Somewhere?
So you said upper body, arm swing, lower body, joint.
Right, so I can put, if I put a UB above this and an LB. Okay. And then as we do that, since hopefully I'm not confusing you too much, the other kind of question that comes in here is explain the joint sequencing. So that's 8, so this is number 9, right? I'm just kind of adding questions, so I'm going to keep writing a whole bunch of stuff. But you have these 4 things, so we'll keep talking about physics and physiology in a second, but within biomechanics, if you just see biomechanics, you're going to tell me upper body for the arm swing, lower body for the joint sequencing. But somewhere else you might see a question come up that says, explain to me the joint sequencing that occurs in the lower body of the biomechanics of a vertical jump. So that's what we talked about, the order that happens. What's the first thing that happens as we start going down from the upper body standpoint?
Arm swing, back.
Arm swing down.
Arm
Arm swing,
down.
you can think about back too. Arm swing down, and then what happens with the upper body as it comes
Upper body, trunk flexion.
trunk flexion, and then what?
Hip.
Hip.
Flexion. No, hip extension.
No, you're right, hip flexion.
Flexion, and then
Knee.
flexion.
And then ankle,
Flexion.
better way to think about it, what's that one?
Dorsey.
That's that dorsiflexion one as we come down.
Dorsey.
Loading up all those mechanisms, we're loading up all those big muscles in order to be released. And then when we go to ready to release, we go the other way around.
Reverse order.
Reverse order. So that we started here,
Plantar
So,
extension.
no,
there,
so
there,
trunk-
there, and then we're off the
trunk
ground as we go.
extension, hip extension, knee extension, and then plantar flexion.
Plantar flexion.
And
Right.
then arm.
Yeah, then the arms go up is on the way back up. So that's the joint sequencing aspect. Somebody might see that on the test. That's another question within that initial one there. Okay. What's the physics of the vertical jump? This one's kind of simple because all you have to really say is beating gravity and also getting off ground as fast as you can. Remember, that's the number one thing within jumping. How fast can you get off of the ground is how you are able to jump fast. And beating gravity is not the best, we'll leave it there for now, that's easy for you guys to write, but beating gravity is not the best way to think about it because everybody can jump. It's really, how long can I be in the air for, and that's by getting off the ground fast. And we talk about those numbers too. You don't have to worry about it for your test so much, but it's good for you guys to get out and work with your athletes. If they can stay in the air for longer than 2 seconds, 2 seconds max, and longer than that, they're probably jumping pretty damn high. If they're only in the air for about a second, they're probably about an average jumper. If they're in the air for less than a second, they probably should try to take up chess, or maybe tennis was not a lot of jumping. That was mean, but you know what I mean. And physiology.
Fast twitch fibers.
Fast twitch fibers. Another nice easy one for us, right? And say the next one.
Explosive
Explosiveness. Okay, and that's where the 3 R's kind of worked in. But if you get this one for physiology, I don't need the 3 R's. You want to add it, that's great. You got to tell me fast twitch, fibers. That's what fibers make us kind of look better. Here's something actually autism. Fast twitch fibers and being explosive is happening within the physiology of a vertical jump. All right, so you got those 4, and also one more that pops in there from George sequencing standpoint. So we should be on 9 so far. How are we doing on time? Doing good, Ms. Blackwood? I'm going to keep you on time. You guys are still doing that. We'll kind of roll over this way. We're number 10 now. So how do you train the 3 R's of power? What are the 3 R's of power? We just did it. Relative strength.
Rate of force development.
Rate of force development. I'm going to condense it. So we put that. And what's the next one? That we just did.
Reactive strength.
So can I just put, I'll just do that, and we'll kind of, I'm shortening things a little bit, but you guys know what they are. So your 3 R's of power: relative strength, rate of force development, reactive strength. How do we properly train that? Relative strength, the ones that we talked about, we're talking about squat and deadlift. What do you want to be at to be able to jump and be explosive? How much should you lift in the squat? 2 times your body weight. Deadlift is 1.5 times your body weight. And that's how you train the relative strength. Like we said the other day, if I can get to 2 times my body weight, I'm in a great position to be strong and to be able to jump high 99.9% of the time. Rate of force development, how do we train it? 2 ways. This one comes down to 2. Number 1, if we're thinking about jumping here, jump high.
How fast we can produce max tension.
Yeah, you're right there, but from a training standpoint, jump high a lot, and then move weight fast. And I gave you some times for that. Squat is how long? How long should your rep last from the squat?
Less than 3 seconds.
Yeah, 3 seconds. And what's deadlift?
When you say deadlift.
Oh, you said, we'll take it off, that's fine. I definitely didn't? You don't have any notes anymore? Okay, it's fine. So squat needs to last 3 seconds. So if I got 315 on my back, and it takes me 5 seconds to do that squat, I'm moving that weight way too slow, and it's not going to help my force development in order to jump high and be powerful, because I'm in that slow weight training mode. Gives me more strength, which is not a bad thing necessarily, but it also kills me to be able to produce the strength. And we just talked about reactive strength. What's the way you train reactive strength? We threw it up here. It's called plyometric. You could even just say plyos if you see this question and you don't think to spell the metrics part out. If you say plyos, I know what you mean. All right, you guys are getting that one. I'm going to slide over this way. We're halfway there. Not too hard, is it? Really? Kind of, no? So since we just put those up here, I would make this one simple too. Well, I shouldn't say simple. That's 10, you got 11, 12, and 13. It'll just look like this on your test. Relative strength, and I'm just going to say go. In other words, you explain relative strength. Now over there we talk about how we train it. That's different. What is relative strength? What is rate of force development? What is reactive strength? Right. So we get into the relative strength, that's when you're talking about how much force you can produce per your body weight. We talked about that within the relative strength world. Okay? Is that in your brains a little bit? Rate of force development, we just talked about how fast we can create maximum tension is rate of force development. And then reactive strength that we just talked about today is eccentric concentric transition, which is working the stretch reflex, and we talked about a few things within inside of that. Okay, make you guys work a little bit for those 3. But when you see these questions on your test, that's what I'm asking for. You'll be looking at your test, what the hell is he talking about? You guys know If you see reactive strength go, I just want you to describe reactive strength and what it is. Not how you train it, what it is. Why is it important in order to look at the 3 R's of power.
So you said relative strength was how much?
How much strength you have compared to your body weight, or how much force you have, force you can produce in relation to your body weight.
You have in relation to body weight,
Mm-hmm.
and then you said rate of force development is how fast you can move.
How
body
fast you can produce maximum tension.
How fast you can use maximum tension, and then reactive strength.
Eccentric concentric transition, which trains the stretch reflex, which is basically how fast the muscle can contract after it's been lengthened. So that one's probably a little bit longer than the other two, but that's what's going on with reactive strength. Remember, it's that it's loading the springs and unloading the springs. You know what? I'll make it a little bit easier on it. If you remember that for reactive strength, how fast a spring can be unloaded after it's been loaded. If that's a little bit easier to kind of have in our brains versus all the other stuff I just said. How fast you can unload the spring after it's been loaded is reactive strength. Let me write that one, or you guys got it in your brain. How fast you can unload the spring
So say
after it's been loaded.
please 12 again and 13 again.
I'll do 12 first.
Yeah.
Okay, rate of force development, how fast you can produce maximum tension. That's a real simple one for that part. And I think that's how we had it in the notes, dude. Is that what we had in the notes, Jay?
For rate of force
Yeah.
development. Yeah, how fast we can produce max tension.
Yeah, so that's all you, if you have any notes somewhere, that's all you got. When you think, we talked about some other stuff inside there. We also talked about how to train it, which is over there in a different question. But for the answer to that question is how fast you can produce maximum tension. And then reactive strength is how fast you can unload the spring after it's been loaded. We'll condense that down to that totally unscientific way of saying it, but in our brains it makes sense, I think. We're loading, 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 how fast can we unload? If I'm doing that Marine push-up, how fast can I unload after I've loaded all that stuff up in order to jump off the ground and clap? So don't just think about it from a jumping standpoint. Everything kind of goes everywhere across. All right, good? All right, keep rolling here. Where we at now? Do that one. So most important force in sprinting is what? I already said it over there. When we had it on that side. What's the most important force in sprinting?
Ground?
Strong reaction.
Ground reaction. So that's the actual answer, but then also going to see this, and you'll see why. Why is ground reaction the most important force in sprinting? What are you constantly having to do? Overcome gravity in order to maintain those vertical jumps. So ground reaction is the actual force. You got to tell me why, because you're constantly overcoming gravity in order to produce those vertical jumps. How many questions are on this test?
10.
What's the worst thing you can do for one of these questions? Leave them blank, right? Fire some stuff in there, because I'm giving you 10 questions. Each one is worth 10 points. I have points available, right? I want to give you some points.
Yeah.
But if you leave it blank, I can't give you any points. Fire some stuff in there. If you can't remember ground reaction, say propulsion force, if you remember that one from the horizontal standpoint. It's wrong, but I'll give you some shots because at least you have something related to the topic. Okay. What's wrong?
Oh, no, I'm trying to figure out what to say why for ground force. If we already had it in our notes.
You want me to say it again? I just said it out loud. You ready?
Yeah.
You want to write it down?
Mm-hmm.
In order to overcome gravity and produce the vertical jumps. Is that how it said it right there? No. I'm sure I said it the same way. Doesn't really matter.
In order
Just have
to
that.
overcome gravity.
And produce those small vertical jumps, which is what sprinting is, right? Constantly doing a little small vertical jump every time in order to go down. All right, 3 laws of motion that we discussed in class. What's the first one? Can we help you? You want to go try to find it? So we first started talking about running. Okay.
F equals MA.
F equals MA, that's number 1. So I don't need you, for your test, you can just write that, but make sure we have in our brains, what does that mean? What's the F?
Force equals mass times acceleration.
Mass times acceleration, right? So how much force we produce is related to how fast we accelerate and compared to how much mass we are carrying. And from the standpoint of running, that's your body weight. Right? So force equals mass times acceleration. What's the second one?
Rest motion,
Well, rest stays at rest,
yeah,
and motion will stay in motion.
stay in motion.
That's a very unscientific way of saying that law. That's all I really care about. If you write it like that, you've got it. Draw these arrows. Rest stays at rest, and motion stays in motion. But remember, an object at rest, this plexiglass thing is going to be at rest until I apply some kind of a force. Otherwise, it'll stay at rest. An object in motion will stay in motion unless some kind of a force is applied. This goes back to what we talked about. If I'm on cruise control out on 40 at 65, am I accelerating? If I'm on 65 cruise control, is my car accelerating? It's
Yeah.
not accelerating, it's just maintaining 65. That's top end speed essentially from a running standpoint. Once you reach top end speed, you are no longer accelerating, you are just maintaining. That's that motion there. What's the third one?
Equal and opposite force.
Equal and opposite force. And the best way to think about it for the test I do is write that one, just keep some stuff in our brains. Right now I'm pushing against the ground, and the ground is pushing an equal opposite force back against me, allows me to stay on the ground. What's pushing me into the ground? What force? That happens in nature.
Gravity.
Gravity. Gravity's pushing me down right now. If the ground doesn't push back up in the same amount of force, I would be collapsing underneath the weight of gravity. So the ground is pushing back against me. When we are running, especially when we are accelerating, we are pushing force into the ground to accelerate. The ground is pushing back at me in the same amount of force that I push in. That allows me to accelerate down the track. How much force we apply into the track will determine how fast we are getting out of the blocks, which we talked about. Force is very important for acceleration, not as important for this from a strength standpoint. Well, I shouldn't say it's for run, for this one, for run. All right, you guys are writing that one over here. 5 more. Now, the biggest key for this test is next Thursday, but we have these presentations coming up. If you haven't already done your presentation, this weekend's a great time to knock that thing out, because this test is going to take up a lot of your thought processes as far as that stuff goes. All right, 3 ways to accelerate faster. First one we just said, well, run faster is a different one, you're right, but in order to start running faster, we have to accelerate first. But I just said it, equal and opposite is what's happening here. Apply more force. In other words, be stronger, but from the standpoint of what we just talked about over here, if you apply more force, you are able to accelerate faster. What's another way to accelerate faster? What do you got to do with your body? Do you want to stand straight up to try to accelerate?
Lean forward.
Lean forward. So this is where we talked about, if you go back to your acceleration stuff in your notes, mechanics become an issue here. We definitely want to focus on mechanics, but remembering that how many strides should it take before you're done accelerating, ideally?
Before you're done?
You should be at top.
Before you're gonna run.
If I'm going to run 100 meters right now, how many strides should it take for me to be out accelerating and being at top end speed? Should it be 50 meters and I'm still accelerating?
What is your stride limit?
You talking about when you come out the,
I'm in the blocks, and I come out and I go.
like 3?
That's what I say, like 3 steps, 3 or 4, right?
The true answer to that is 3 to 6 strides.
Stride.
So Zeb was kind of right there. What's your stride? Kind of all that kind of stuff. But 3 to 6 strides, you should be gone. And at that point, if you watch the track guys, at that point it should be standing straight and nice and
She
tall.
6 strides,
Going.
Usain Bolt's 3.
There you go. Yeah.
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 So
But you say Bolt's different. Just because we talk about.
No. I
But
know.
why did you say Bolt
Are you
different?
quick?
What did you say
6
Bolt?
quick ones.
What did you say Bolt do that's wrong though?
He don't.
Straight
pick
up.
Except straight up.
Yeah.
His acceleration is all of this basically. He doesn't really do this very well.
Not
And that's
towards
what the
the
problem
end.
is.
That's when he's
So
like
he's
up.
basically trying to accelerate in a very bad mechanical situation. So he's trying to do top end speed and accelerating in a bad position. That's why he's usually behind in the first 20 meters, and then he blows by everybody because he has so much force that he's able to get by with these bad
And what'd you
mechanics.
say? Just
But
leave
it's
him
wrong.
alone. Just leave him alone after all that.
Why would you wanna try to change
Don't
it?
try to change
You
it.
saying stay lower,
Is it
you're
wrong?
not fast enough, come on. Alright, but then number 3, right, you have 3 of them up here. The third one is apply right direction of force. And this one, that's a really bad direction, I can change that. This one we talked about acceleration, some of you guys said you've done that drill before, you lean against the wall and you just chop your feet back and forth. When you are properly accelerating, we are trying to still get our feet to drive back directly this way. You never want to come up and try to kick and recycle over because then you get a lot of braking force when we try to accelerate. If our foot gets too far in front of us, we're slowing ourselves down and be able to try to accelerate again. If you watch the high-end track guys, when they kick down, there's never a recycle. It actually, their foot kind of skips back against the track. Right, we have a track star over here. They're here, as they push, their foot kind of skips back and it stays low to the track. It never comes up here against a high knee, because then we're going to have a lot of braking force. Within those first 3 to 6 strides, we are straight back as we try to accelerate, and we are applying the proper direction of the force. Right? So those 3 things are the 3 ways that we increase acceleration. Why do you not want to lean forward the entire time? Mess yourself up with what?
Yeah,
Why can't, in theory now, if you look at this, why can't I just accelerate forever?
Because you're gonna run out of
you
energy.
don't run out.
If we get in our car, get in the Camaro, it could probably accelerate, it gets to, I don't know, what the top end speed. Think about a car that has a lot of top end speed.
I thought that was a Mustang, but go
I
ahead.
thought it was too.
No, it's a Camaro. But give me another, give me like, so like a Lamborghini has a top end speed of 200 miles per hour, right?
Yeah.
It can accelerate to 200, why can't it keep going at that point? It doesn't have, until it runs out, it doesn't have the force anymore. Its engine is really good, but it only has enough engine to give you the 200 miles per hour, and then it can't go any more than that.
Power.
Power and force. You can't just lean over and try to accelerate forever, because at some point you're going to reach the top end of your force. This one and that one in the right direction. But the force that you have to accelerate, and then at that point, you're not doing any more
Daniel
acceleration.
Jones ate it because
He ate it because of, well, kind of because of that, but also because of the force. Because if you watch him closely in that video, he's going at it he's running pretty good, right? I don't care about the miles per hour, I think that was all screwed up. But then he turned and kind of saw something coming at him. He tried to accelerate while he was at a very high top end speed.
Up there, yeah.
He's at his top end speed. He does not have the force to try to accelerate at that point, and then gravity won that battle and dropped him on the ground.
Yeah.
Right? That's what happened in the Daniel Jones situation. At some point, gravity is going to keep driving you down this way, so we can't lean totally flat to the ground, but we also can't stay down there because we don't have enough force to just keep doing that the entire time through. That's why if you're trying to steal a base, you don't tell your base runners to lean over the entire time. That's the dumbest thing ever. Within 4 strides, it should be at top end speed, then they're going, and then they drop down and try to slide. Don't have a base stealer keep doing this the entire time.
That is just
head
so...
first down.
They should still be here, and then do the Superman thing going into it.
I was about to say, there's like 2 different slides y'all do. Y'all do that one, and then
Pop
the
up.
slide
pop-up
one,
slide.
yeah.
Different strokes for different folks. I can tell you that we actually did a research thing on this. You guys, Coach Heineke? He used to be a strength coach here over with the football teams over there. Him and I did a research study. We took a guy on the baseball team and had him try to stay down that entire
still
motion
do
from
it?
first to second base, which is 90 feet. He didn't slide in this situation. He was just going from first to second base and going straight ahead and stayed down here the entire time. Then we had him do a regular run. We didn't even give him much mechanics. We told him just to try to steal a base.
Yeah.
What did he do on his own at that point?
He did
After
it on
about
his
4 or
own.
5 steps, where's he
Then
at?
he was up.
He's here trying to go as fast as he can.
Did
Which
he
time was
slide?
faster?
Did he stop? Did he slide each time?
There was no
There was
sliding
no
involved.
sliding.
Just because, well, this was just a research thing. I'm not trying to actually have him
Okay.
beat a throw from a catcher. We're trying to see how fast he can go.
Right.
The guy that just came out of his break within 3 or 4 strides and just ran was a full second to second and a half faster than the one that stayed down and just stayed like this the entire
You
time.
messed with his mechanics. You weren't supposed to.
Well, these are all slow guys anyways. Like I told you, I didn't think the guys, if Randy Rhodes was horrendous,
And
I ain't
Usain
fixing
Bolt
Randy
does
Rhodes.
it. And Usain Bolt does it. He's the fastest ever.
Right.
Yeah.
So is it wrong?
In theory,
Right.
could we make
Yeah.
Usain Bolt faster by fixing his acceleration out of the blocks? Could we make him faster? In theory, probably. What's going to happen to
In
his
theory.
What's going to happen to his speed though when we first do it?
It's gonna get off.
His times are going to go way down because he's never done that Could it come back at some point? Yeah, but he's already running world
That's
records.
extra training.
Why does it matter?
That's extra training, cause then he's gonna have
Well,
to
no,
figure out
we
how to match that
16,
card.
16.
and-
It ain't broke.
You know, if it ain't broke, just let the man run. Just let him
At
run.
that point.
If I have a baseball pitcher that's throwing 95, but his mechanics are off and they're not gonna cause any kind of injury, do I wanna change his mechanics so maybe he can throw 97 or 98?
No, wait
No,
till
that's
after season.
pretty stupid. As long as there's no injury involved, that's gonna look better.
Maybe the off season.
Well, I would say wait till after the season, you know.
Trying to make Reggie
try
But
to-
like you said, if it's not
Even
gonna,
then, I might
if
not.
it's not
yeah.
gonna cause an injury later on, then there's no point.
Maybe add some strength to what he's doing, but don't try to change what his mechanics are, 'cause he's already throwing 95.
Never in season.
Give him some, never in season.
No.
Give him some force maybe, but at the off season.
Don't try it right after the season.
Give some time, a little work in, and then we can go. Alright, you're gonna either get bench, or you're gonna get squat. And you're gonna have in there explain, I'm not gonna write it one time, but it'd be the same. Explain the eccentric and concentric,
You said we're gonna get one or the other?
yes. So you'll for sure get one or the other. You're either gonna get bench or you're gonna get
16,
squat.
18, either or.
Yes. And it's gonna stay just like that. So when you see this, we're gonna talk about it right now, but understand what we're talking about. Explain the concentric and eccentric and concentric muscles being used for each one of those. What are the eccentric muscles being used for the bench?
Loading up.
Loading.
Loading up. Which ones are loading up?
Your pecs,
Your pecs and your
triceps.
tricep. Is that eccentric or concentric when I'm loading up?
Eccentric.
Eccentric, right? Then what's the concentric muscles when I unload?
Showing your strength.
Showing your strength. Do the muscles change? No.
No.
Remember, that's the big thing about when you're looking through these, the muscles do not change. What is it for the squat? What's the eccentric muscles for the squat?
Quad.
Quads and buttocks,
Glutes.
glutes, yep, your ass. Right. And as I go down the eccentric or concentric, as I load up,
Eccentric.
eccentric, concentric on the way back. When I unload it, do the muscles change on the way back up?
No.
Okay. You 4 or 5, including Tanner right here, are gonna break the trend. Every year I give this test, somebody screws that up and gives me different muscles. I'm telling every year I'd say the same thing. The muscles don't change.
So
Make
we
sure
gotta-
you know the muscles, but the muscles don't change. Go ahead.
So you said explain the motions of eccentric and concentric, and then say the muscles.
Yes.
So bench is pecs for both, and then squat is quads and buttocks.
Yeah, well, and also, I mean, you said I didn't write it, my fault.
Well,
So motions are in there as well, so let's go back to our practical area now. So from a bench standpoint, what motions occurring at the shoulder?
uh,
Horizontal.
Horizontal, for the eccentric component is what?
AB.
Abduction, coming down.
Horizontal.
That's my pecs. What's happening at the elbow as I eccentrically come down?
Flexion.
Well,
Elbow,
Horizontal, well, just flexion.
just flexion. Those are horizontal there, 'cause that's all the elbow does. So horizontal abduction at the chest, and then flexion for the tricep. And on the way up, do the muscles change?
No.
No. But what does change is the motions. On the way up, what's happening at the shoulder? Horizontal
Extend.
A-
Well,
AD.
a deduction, and then what's happening at the elbow?
extend.
That's the extension.
Yeah.
Okay. What's happening, and I'll tell you for that, I'll say shoulder and elbow, and for the squat, I'm just gonna say knee and hip. What's happening at the knee on the way down for the squat? Flexion, what's happening at the hip?
Flexion.
Flexion also. What's happening on the way back up?
Extension.
Extension and extension of the muscles chain. No, I keep saying, every year I say it, but somebody's gonna give me a different muscle, I know you are.
Eccentric,
Deja
you're
vu.
controlling the weight.
Is that deja vu?
Yep.
And then concentric.
Concentric, you're showing your strength.
Mhm.
Eccentric, you're loading it up, concentric, you're releasing it, however you want to try to remember, but that's gonna be on the test. Either or, like somebody said over here, you'll get one or the other one for sure. So the other ones are kind of for sure, it's gonna be a little bit randomized, but these are for sure, you get one of these on your test. All right, 19. Where we at?
Right on time.
This is another kind of easy one if you get it. Why are sprinters born, not made?
Genetics.
Genetics.
If you write that, you got it. So if you get your test on Thursday, you're looking through it. Can I get that one?
What
Okay,
is
that's
that?
easy.
Why
Why are sprinters born, not born, it's a B, born, not made? And then you say genetics. That's a simple one from that standpoint. And then last, but
Why
certainly
can't I
not
answer that
least,
question first?
And I should say for this one, this is another everybody's gonna get. Everybody's gonna get one of this one, and everybody's gonna get this last one. So here it comes. Explain 4x4 training technique that we talked about here in class.
4 weeks.
4 weeks?
We're training 4 weeks,
Oh, yeah, it's for,
and then we rest 4 weeks before we're gonna get back to
Mhm.
our maximum performance window.
So strength is here.
So strength training 4 weeks, and then speed training for 4 weeks, right?
Correct.
That's all you gotta say.
Well, there's a little more in there. I'm not gonna give you
I'm-
all of it. There's a little more to
Rest.
think about. The rest plays a role, but also where you wanna be at within your, like, off-season, preseason, in-season. Where do these numbers wanna be at? Okay, so I'll say that out loud again. They're in your notes somewhere. From an off-season or preseason or in-season standpoint,
Strength off season.
where you wanna be at, exactly
Well, okay,
right.
Strength training 4 weeks before the season. No. Yes?
No.
No.
Only because you wanna have this 4 week end right when your season starts.
So 4 weeks of strength, then 4 weeks of speed right before the season.
Right.
Okay.
And even if you're in your off-season, the ideal thing to do is, so say you start your off-season,
Plan it backwards.
well, kind of, but keep doing a 4x4x4x4, but always have the last 4 end right when the season starts.
oh, yeah.
So if we're in the beginning of June for football, they should do 4 weeks of strength, and then 4 weeks of speed. And then go back and do 4 weeks of strength, and then 4 weeks of speed. And ideally, when that last speed ends, their season should be starting, and we're coming back in the middle of August, whatever, and we're ready to start doing that after we do our 2 months of strength and speed, strength and speed.
Yeah, because we said 4 weeks of strength training while still running fast, and 4 weeks of speed training with explosive lifts.
Yes. So that's what, she just said it. If you want to go back in your notes, that's what it was.
I had to go find it.
But Ms. Crumbles a friend now, because that's the answer to the question, what she just said.
Okay, so do this training technique back to back during the off season, and make sure the last 4 weeks is speed training.
Yes, and the last 4 weeks ends, right
The
when,
last 4 weeks ends
when your season starts.
when the season. So the last.
So you should
4
be your
weeks-
fastest right when your season starts.
Okay, so do back to back 4x4 training, and then on the end of the last 4 weeks of speed training, that's when the season should start.
It should start, yes. And then once you're in season, we stay away from this pretty much, and all we're trying to do right there is just maintain. That's where some of that stuff we talked about before with the 3-second squats and your body weight stuff can all fall within the in-season stuff. We didn't really, that was a different class altogether, but really the 4x4 should be helping a lot to get you ready to be your fastest or your most explosive once your season starts if we're doing things right. Track people have been doing this for years and years. They call it periodization. I condense it down, not everybody is as special in their brains as track people, no offense. They're very unique in what they do. Basketball players and football, they're just dumb. And baseball players for sure, just dumb. So we gotta condense it down, make it a little bit simple, right? Basketball jocks.
Right, the job.
So they're 4x4s. They just wanna get in the weight room. Track people don't do that. They take a little more
They
science
really
than what they
don't.
do. But football guys and basketball guys and baseball guys, they wanna have this, oh, I need to lift, I get strong. That's why you have this idea, and that's why we started this.
Different atmosphere.
Myself and my partner. So there you go. All right, so there's your test. Remember this one for sure, so that one for sure for everybody, one of these for sure, and the rest of it all be randomized. You're hoping for a couple of those easy ones as you do your stuff. All right, question? All right, Cam is first, and then Mr. Dixon, he's not here either, and then you, so you're fourth, and then you're third.
They here until